Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dev Diary. Now, I'm often pretty cynical when it comes to mobile games, but I promise that today things are different. So if you enjoyed today's video, remember to leave a like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Also make sure notifications are turned on so you don't miss future videos. So today we are cloning a game that I discovered on my mobile journey called Meganum. Now in short, Meganum is a puzzle game that mixes logic and math in a way that reminds me of playing nanograms. Each row and column is given a math problem to solve, and numbers must be highlighted in a way to solve all of them at once. It's a bit difficult to explain in words, but again, if you've ever played a nanogram game like Picross, it's like that. And after playing for only 5 minutes, I was just like, I have to try remaking this for myself. And that's exactly what I did. So much like in Meganum, we've got a giant board of numbers with answers on all sides for each row and column. Our board is generated as a 2D array to cover both x and y coordinates for each square. Each square is also given a random number from 1 to 9. Then random squares are chosen to make up the answers for each row/column. These answers are then calculated based on the current game mode. So addition mode will add the numbers, multiplication mode will multiply, then those numbers are then saved to two lists for both vertical and horizontal answers. Now moving on to gameplay, when the player left clicks, depending on where they click will do different things. First, clicking outside the grid will prompt the game to display the current amount for the selected row or column. This number is calculated based on current active numbers only. Clicking again will hide this number. Clicking on one of the squares within the grid will actually do a couple of things. First, it will toggle that square to be active or inactive, so all active numbers for that square's row and column are mathed out and compared to our list of answers. And if they match, whether it's the correct setup or not is reflected in the display of the answer's color. In other words, as long as the numbers match, the answer is highlighted. And finally, if all answers have been matched, this assumes that the only possible layout has been uncovered and thus the player wins. Else the player is able to continue clicking squares until that condition is met. And funny story, this final check was the most difficult part to figure out. The very first version mirrored a nanogram approach where the layout was determined beforehand, and so if the player's grid matched the answer grid, then that was a win. However, this was an issue if there were more than one way to reach a solution, for example multiples of the same number. And in this version, the answer list was nothing more than cosmetic, basically a guide for the player to figure out the proper answer. This led to the second version, which remedied the issue from the first version, but the only problem was it still focused on comparing a solved grid to the player's, which meant that the player could cheat and simply activate and deactivate numbers until they filled the condition of the problem, basically removing the entire logic aspect of the game. So came version 3, which assumes that if the initial setup was done properly, that we did not need to compare the grid to anything. Instead, we could take the equations from each row and column, and there would only be one layout that would satisfy the win condition. And so far, testing has proven this to be a solid approach to the idea with no errors or issues with the math. Which, if you've been here a while, this is a straight up miracle because I am absolutely terrible at math. Unlike you, who if they enjoy the videos, can help me continue making them by supporting me on Patreon, where doing so can get you access to exclusive content and downloads, plus early access to the weekly Dev Diary videos before they're released on YouTube. Now in Meganum, there are more than just addition and multiplication. However, to unlock those, you need to do a minimum number of puzzles from the other sets. And admittedly, I was just simply too impatient to wait to see what the likes of subtraction and division may alter in the gameplay. Though, it may have been for the best because again, I am terrible at math, and I may have not been able to figure out whatever may lie ahead. I mean, while working on just the addition and multiplication modes, there was this constant nagging feeling that a lot of this is probably a lot easier and simpler to program if you're good at math. Like, there are just so many loops and repeated patterns for the checks that it just feels like a lot of this was overthinking things. But it is what it is, and so it's easier to just accept that I'll always have to work harder than smarter. But indeed, this was where I stopped for this one. Without knowing how things like subtraction and division work in Meganum, I wasn't able to continue. But it was pleasantly surprising to experience the journey on this one. Starting from, oh, this looks cool, can I reproduce it? To having a game plan, executing that game plan, and actually being successful. Just, chef's kiss. Best feeling ever, 10 out of 10, major reason why I love making games. And as a quick addendum here at the end, while putting this video together, I realized that there's a playable PC version of Mega Gnome on itch, so be sure to check out the original at the link in the description. And so for you developers out there, what's your reason for making games? Is it just a hobby, or are you looking to do it full time? Or is it like, an avenue for your artistic expression? And for any non-game devs out there, have you ever thought about getting into game dev? And if so, what's been the major thing that's been stopping you from trying? As always, I would love to hear from y'all, so leave your thoughts and stories in the comments. But with that said, brings us to the end of today's Dev Diary, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.